What I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. There we go. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Welcome, everybody. We got a big show this morning. Want to make sure that everything is working properly. Got a little bit of a different setup today. Testing out a different platform. And so it looks like we're all set and all good. Greetings, everybody. Greetings, right on. Good morning. Good morning. Peace, peace, peace. Tales from the crypto. Thank you all for joining this morning. Those who will see and hear this later on, welcome and greetings to you as well. Got a lot going on to this morning, and and David Soberg, you got that right. That's right. From the graphic, from the cover photo, Lee Cobb, one of my favorite movies, 12 Angry Men, the original. The remake was all right too, but the original is really an amazing film. So that's where that came from. So the plan this morning is, as soon as he gets here, is to get into a debate, actually, over a little bit of reparations and the racial wealth divide with Dedrick Asante-Muhammad. And then in the second hour, we're going to have several guests who will be joining us to talk about and commemorate Russell Maroon Shoatz. There's still a lot more to say given his passing and the other day, but the work still continues, and of course we still want to make sure that we raise him up and that the plight of those remaining political prisoners. And of course, to make sure that, as we would have to expect at some point in the future, that other political prisoners will be created, that we remain vigilant about that. And given all the attention given all over the place to Julian Assange, deservedly so, and I support that, actually, and I support his freedom. And Stephen Donziger in his case, and I support his freedom, and congratulations to him as well. But for all that discussion, we need to remember and be vigilant about and remain in support of those who do not get that kind of coverage. And of course, Russell Maroon Shoatz was one of those who should have been freed long ago, and may have been, had there been large, greater degrees of support. And certainly Mumia is still there. Leonard is still there. Sundiata is still there. Mutulu is still there. I'm not sure to what extent, what state, literally pun intended, but David Gilbert may just, I think he actually is out now. But anyway. So again, greetings to everybody, and I look forward to getting into all of that. If I can, let me just make a quick check on Dedrick, and then but what I'll do in the interim is get started with one or two other stories, if I can. A big shout out to Josh and Aaliyah, uh, uh, part of the I Mix What I Like crew. Appreciate their presence and assistance this morning. By the way, just real quick, a couple things actually. Today is the anniversary of the 1989 invasion of Panama by the United States. And something that, frankly, I should have been doing much more to talk about. But it came to me too late. So maybe we'll plan something for the next week or so, because it's always appropriate. But this was when the relaunch under Bush Senior, right? That would have been Bush Senior, right? This is just after Reagan left. No, or is this? Yeah, getting my timeline messed up. But a lot of horrors involved in that invasion. A lot of the destruction of obviously the poor communities, the blacker communities in Panama. All of that was involved. The testing of advanced weaponry, all kinds of stuff. Let me try this again here. Did Dedrick show up? Yeah, Dedrick is here. So, okay, let me. All right, there we. So anyway, I did want to at least mention that, and something I'd like to come back to and cover. In fact, maybe I'll invite, because I wanted to. What is that? Oh, hold on. Before I get to Dedrick, real quick. What is that? And I know folks in the chat who were there yesterday enjoyed the show as much as I did. I want to make sure I get the name right if I can real quick, because I don't have it in front of me. But I want to support this platform and see if we can engage them even more. Yeah, this one here. Ramiro Sebastian Funes, I believe. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. But this brother whose channel I've been turned on to in the last couple of weeks is fire. So I need to put a link to that as well and start trying to build with them because he deals a lot with the Latin American community and the left, looking at the Latin American struggles from the left. And they had a great program yesterday that I happened to be able to catch live. And they made, and a lot of what they were doing with his guests were looking at commercial, popular news, and state official commentary on what's happening in the world, and then themselves commenting on it. His guests were brilliant, and it reminded me again of why we are trying to do what we're doing here, and why I look for sources like that, because I cannot take in as an individual that kind of messaging without the kind of collectives that were gathered in his chat yesterday or on his panel yesterday, because doing it alone, trying to withstand the horrors of the messaging as an individual is too traumatic, is too damaging. So none of us should attempt to do that. So the more we're organized, the more we engage commercial and state-sponsored media as collectives in political educational spaces, the better. This is the safest way to do it. And then just this morning, I happened to catch this documentary on YouTube that I would encourage, that makes the point in a different way. It's called The Man Who Knew Too Much, and it's about the British and Irish conflict. And it's focused on a British intelligence officer. And long story short, just for the purposes of this quick point, is that they were talking about the so-called war against terrorism is primarily, before even physical, is a psychological warfare engagement. So this is going back decades in terms of how they understood and people engage media and journalism as stages for psychological warfare engagement. And specifically, they made this point that he was asked in today in a modern or contemporary interview to reflect back on what he had done in terms of his use of psychological warfare in the press. And he said that he didn't want to share because there are techniques still having impact. And it reminded me of what was going on the panel yesterday on Brother Fuñez's channel, and why I'm making that point that we have to engage as collectives, because trying to do this as individuals is unsustainable. Anyway, so this time in the show notes for this program, I got it right in terms of my guest's bio. So I'll let you all refer to that. He is, of course, Dedrick Asante-Muhammad, who is a longtime analyst of race economics, and specifically the racial wealth divide, about which we're going to talk and I think debate this morning in response to a Twitter exchange that we saw the other day. So I want to welcome Brother Dedrick back to the show. Good morning. Good to see you again. Always a pleasure. Welcome back.
Hey, good to be here. My light is a little
hear
off.
You.
I'll fix that.
Is that my fault?
You don't.
Why do I not hear you? Hold on a second. Why am I not hearing you?
I do not know.
Because it looks like your settings are fine. Hold on, my bad, everybody. Let's see. Let's see. Does everybody else hear you? Is it just me not hearing you? Yeah, he's coming in over good. Thank you, Ricky. So this is just me. My bad, everybody. I'm not. This is got to get the settings right. Let's see. The input. I don't see where there's an output though. The output on the computer is set properly. Dang, this is my bad, everybody, including you, Dedrick.
No
but I don't hear a thing. So what? Let's see. Invite guest, share stream, hide, drag. It lets me mute. But that's just the input, which is fine. So why do I not have an option for... Obioma, that's funny. I saw that. No, there's no swapping Jared's. All right, so what I guess I'll just do then is, let's see. So if I off. All right, Dedrick, let's see. Can you say something again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. So okay. let's just work that way. And got the echo cancellation on. So hopefully there's not an echo, and we'll just go that way. Not entirely sure what else to do about that right now. Anyway, Dedrick. So, okay, let's do this. So the other day, and Josh, if you could pull up number 1 for us, please. It started for us, I think, with a Twitter exchange that I'd like to share.
Your chat's got jokes. I like your chat.
Yeah, the chat. I have left the chat again. I saw. Yeah. The chat has jokes. And Josh, I don't see. Are you sharing the screen? Oh, there we go. There we go. So here we go. If you could start at the top for me, please, real quick, because I just want everybody to get the context. So Sandy Darity, professor, Duke University, and folks, you could check out our exchange a couple of years ago now on the issue of reparations at imixwhatilike.org. Anyway, he wrote here, for those who say American racial economic inequality is subordinate to class inequality, please see table 2. And I show white working household heads consistently have 2 to 3 times the net worth of median black professional managerial black heads. Okay. Hashtag Jazz Thursday chimed in with an article that I think is interesting that I would like us to show in just a moment. Saying that cut the nonsense. At Matt Brunig exposed your reparations con game. Racial wealth gap hustle is this piece showing the gap between the top 10% of blacks and whites, and Adolph Reed exposed even further how much the racial disparities con is a hustle. All right, can you scroll up there just a little bit, Josh, so we can see what he quotes from Adolph Reed, because I have not read this entire piece. I went to look for it. I couldn't get it. So Dedrick, I don't know if you've read the entire piece.
I haven't read the entire piece either, because I think it wasn't some journal, and I wasn't subscribing to the journal. So I didn't get to see. I read the intro to the piece because that was free. And then I read this quote, but I couldn't read the whole piece.
Right. Exactly. I had about the same thing. And then there was something that I believed required some payment as well. So I wasn't prepared for that either. So but what was shared here is Reed and his son quoting that Matt Brunig article, which we're going to look at in just a minute, saying that Matt Brunig found that the overall racial wealth disparity is driven almost entirely by the disparity between the wealthiest 10% of white people and the wealthiest 10% of black people, and that eliminating the gap between the bottom 90% of each group would leave 77.5% of the gap intact. He found as well that eliminating the gap between the bottom 50% of the two populations would eliminate only 3% of the racial gap. Therefore, beneath the counterfactual and largely ahistorical statistical calculations of black wealth foregone or preempted by racial injustice that so appeal to academics and pundits, the reality is that the focus on the racial wealth gap is a politics that express only the interests of the rich and comfortably well off. End quote. So that much said, and then Josh, if we could pull up number 3, then please. Wait. No. That's not right. That's not right. I don't think that is right. No, that's not right. Dang, my bad. And we had just set all this up. So where did I put the...
I like David Silberg. I no longer read, but go ahead.
Oh, by the way, Reed has been in touch. We're trying to set up a time for him to come back on here. Oh man, wait a minute. This my bad, everybody. This whole switching platforms and testing platforms had a whole bunch of stuff. I am blaming StreamYard. But okay, here we go. All right, here we go. So Josh, my bad. Thank you very much again. If you would please share this link. This is the article they're talking about. Oh, you already did. Look at that. He beat me to it. Check that out. All right. Anyway, that's the Matt Brunig article. And essentially, I just highlighted on mine. I just want to read a little bit of it so that people get, and then you and I, Dedrick, can get into this. Brunig writes, one thing I have tried to emphasize over the years, which I will do again here in a different way, is that due to the extremely concentrated wealth distribution in the U.S., the racial wealth gap is almost entirely among the upper classes in each racial group. If you take the net worth of all white households and divide it by the number of white households, you get $900,600. If you do the same thing for Black households, you get $140,000. The difference between these figures, $770,600, is the best representation of the overall racial wealth gap. That is how much more wealth Black people would need per household to have as much wealth as white people have per household. But overall statistics can be misleading. If you decompose both of these bars into deciles, what you find is that nearly all white wealth is owned by the top 10% of white households, just as nearly all Black wealth is owned by the top 10% of Black households. The lower and middle deciles of each racial group own virtually none of their racial group's wealth. What this means is that the overall racial wealth disparity is being driven almost entirely by the disparity between the wealthiest 10% of white people and the wealthiest 10% of Black people. One way to illustrate this point is to see what would happen to the overall racial wealth gap if we entirely close the wealth gap that exists between the bottom 90% of each racial group. Put differently, what would happen to mean Black wealth if the bottom 90% of Black families were given the exact same per household wealth at the bottom 90% of white families? The answer is that mean Black wealth would rise from $140,000 to $311,100. The overall racial wealth gap would thus decline from $760,600 to $589,500, a fall of 22.5%. This means that even after you have completely closed the racial wealth gap between the bottom 90% of each race, 77.5% of the overall racial wealth gap still remains, which is to say that the disparity between the top deciles in each race drives over 3/4 of the racial wealth gap. In much of the popular discourse on the racial wealth gap, the emphasis is on the median white household and the median Black household. To understand how misguided this emphasis is, we can do exactly what we did above, but for the bottom 50% of each race, after topping off the current bottom 50% of Black families so that they have as much wealth per household as the current bottom 50% of white families. Mean Black wealth rises by $23,100, cutting the racial wealth gap by 3%. All right, so that is essentially what Brunig is arguing. And I have found that argument compelling, not, I think, in the way that it's being argued per se in this Twitter exchange, but in terms of a general approach to the condition of Black people, and to understand that the class dynamic here, and maybe to understand why there is a segment of the Black community that continues to promote and benefit from the promotion of, as I'm going to cut to in a few minutes, this this emphasis on investment, Black business, and etc., because they're the only ones who benefit from it. All right.
So, yeah.
Go ahead, Dedrick.
All right. So, I mean, there's many places we can start, right? I mean, the quote, again, didn't read all of Adolph Reed's article, so can't speak on the stuff really beyond what's in the Twitter post, but that's completely wrong, misguided. I mean, his thing, racial wealth gap, is a Black chattering class canard, talking about it's something designed to help stop some type of Black-white coming together with Occupy Wall Street and Bernie Sanders. I mean, it's all ridiculous. Like, the racial wealth divide stuff had been Sandy Darity, Derek Hamilton, myself, we all been working on this since 2003, and Darity, could be much farther behind that. So, like, he's making up stuff there. But I think, we can jump to the Matt Brunig article if you want, but just, and I think, Reed has a overall, I think Reed's point's kind of crazy, at least the point in the Twitter. Again, didn't read the whole thing, but like attacking this as some type of way just to support Black elites, when if you look at Sandy Darity's proposals, they're very progressive proposals that oftentimes are funding much more to lower wealth households. He's not focused on raising, and this is the weird thing, Matt Brunig's article is saying we should focus on the bridging the racial wealth divide between the top 10%. That would be focusing on bringing more money to the Black elite. But what Darity generally does in Hamilton, by focusing oftentimes on median wealth, is focusing on the majority of Black people and how to raise their wealth up, not focusing on. Now, Darity does make the, in some ways, makes the same critique that Matt does, in that he also says we shouldn't just focus on the median wealth. We need to focus on the mean and total wealth, because even if we got Black wealth median to equal white wealth median, there would still be this huge inequality because our top 10% aren't equaling up, and we need to do that too. But he takes a very progressive approach. So, there are a lot of weird things.
Just one quick thing. Brunig is saying very clearly in the last paragraph of his article, he said, the way through this bind is of course to acknowledge that racial capitalism has concentrated almost all of the national wealth in the hands of a small number of white families, and that the proper course of action is to redistribute that wealth to the multiracial lower and working classes, tackling both racial and class inequality simultaneously.
Which is what
so I just want to be clear. He's not.
No, but that's what racial wealth divide scholars have mostly done, including Darity and Hamilton. They've all done papers about breaking up wealth among, using taxation rates to break up wealth among the most elite and to invest that in. Now, I think here's where you might disagree with Brunig, and I think where Brunig goes wrong. He has some idea of like some multiracial, non-racially divided working class or poor. No. What Darity and Hamilton show, and most of us in racial wealth divide clearly understand, is that the middle class and even the poor, Blacks and whites, have significant differences in racial wealth inequality. And that is why this kind of race-blind class analysis doesn't work. Poor Blacks and poor whites aren't even the same class most of the time, because whites still are significantly economically stronger than Blacks. And that causes some unique issues, which is why we do need to tax the wealthy, but we need to have things that are focused particularly on addressing Black people, Latino people, to deal with their unique racial wealth inequality. If you don't, you will never address their issue. You will actually disproportionately benefit white working class people and racial inequality.
But there's a couple different things happening here. Brunig's article is just making Brunig's particular point about how to get rid of the racial class divide entirely. That's his point. His work is being used. That's his point. We don't have to agree with it, but that is his argument.
Well, I interpret, and it's interesting because Brunig has written, like I've written a lot with Chuck Collins. Brunig has written a lot with Chuck Collins. And what's that guy's name who, ADOS dude?
I try not to know.
Anthony Moore, Antonio Moore. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, Antonio, right. Yeah.
Moore. So Antonio Moore, Brunig, and Chuck Collins used to write about racial wealth inequality, right? And then and then Sandy Darity, wrote a lot with Moore. So it's like this interesting piece, but that's what I'm saying, Dedrick, because there's Brunig's argument, then there's Reed's use of that argument versus Darity's disagreement with that argument versus whatever others on Twitter are saying. So in other words, I don't see Brunig is not in this article. I haven't read all his other work. Brunig in this essay or article is not making an argument about reparations. He's not making an argument about, he's not condemning the critique about the racial wealth, or he's not saying what Reed is saying about what people are claiming about the racial wealth divide. He's just making his argument. So I just want to give him that room. I do think Brunig is going into that white left class first space. I think he's doing it very carefully and very gingerly, but he's trying to say, really, we should focus on what I write about. Taxing the wealthy, class redistribution, and this racial wealth divide could be. He's very polite. He's smart about not going too hard at the racial wealth divide analysis, but I say he's wrong. And I say all those people hashtagged on the Twitter, Crystal and Sagar and everybody, the white left is real. The white left and their Black friends, which I think Adolph Reed is playing that role in this, is like jumping on this. Forget racial wealth divide. Let's focus on, I don't know what Adolph Reed is saying. Let's focus on voting rights. Like, really? That's your right?
Yeah, Reed.
Like, what are you talking about?
Reed, that's what I'm saying. His argument is why. Well, first of all, Reed, this is what I'm saying, and I was kind of messing with him and his I don't know, his booking agent or whatever, because I'm saying, you're all over the place, dude. You're all over Jacobin. You're all over all these other these white spaces having this what they want as a conversation around this issue. And there may be things I agree with, but
sure,
this isn't one of them.
Listen to Reed. There's some interesting things, but he clearly is white left's black friend to dismiss a focused racial analysis. That's the role he plays. I mean, oftentimes. I mean, again, many of his writings are worth reading. I'm not dismissing him, what have you.
But at the same time, yeah. I do think that the reparations argument is, relatively speaking, a conservative attempt at dealing with the inequality facing Black people. I do think it is.
Why? How? Why? Like why? I mean, reparations. Because it depends what reparations is. Reparations could be the most radical redistribution of wealth that creates the basis of a socialist economy. It could be giving $1 million to some Black business owners, right? I mean, what depends on what form reparation takes, depending on how conservative or progressive it is.
More or less, the popular reparations movement is one that addresses itself to the established politicians to make a request for a study that would ultimately, maybe, seems mostly centered in its argument popularly around redistributing money to Black businesses, to I mean, that was actually what was being argued as part of the approach to Trump last year or 2 years ago or whenever that was.
Like,
that's what I'm saying. Reparations, to your point.
Reparations leader or group is advocating primarily for.
I didn't say primarily. I said this. I didn't even fit. I said they incorporate this. It's largely focused on business infusion.
I don't think it's largely focused on, but go ahead. I mean, at least the reparation groups I know, like, and particularly Darity and Hamilton have one of their biggest things has been baby bonds, right? Which is not, which is aimed at giving, like, it depends, $20,000 to $40,000. When a kid is born.
Again, that's not my. But I'm not finished, Dedrick. Okay. The point I'm really what I'm saying. But the baby bonds and the Hamilton Darity. I mean, the Hamilton Darity baby bonds argument is not a dominant part of the popular discussion around reparations. I'm talking about where it's popularly discussed online, in chat rooms, etc. Is there is an attempt to make it about business investment, training, job training.
Sure. But there's always appropriation of everything. There's an attempt to appropriate racial wealth divide. Everybody talks about racial wealth gap now. And so everybody's like, and that's why we need financial literacy. Or that's why we need to, whatever. They always will appropriate anything that becomes popular. But I'm just saying the leaders, like even Reed's dismissal of Ta-Nehisi Coates, we can critique Ta-Nehisi Coates all day, but his little bit that he gave about how to address the racial wealth divide was not some giveaway to Black businessmen. It was much more.
No, it was a vague. No, he didn't say anything. He was a vague call for reparations, and that's what I was saying. And
it was a vague call for reparations based on explaining the median wealth of Blacks and how that needs to be the center. And that is a very progressive place to start and to measure reparations is looking at the median wealth of Blacks, which is right now $9,000. And saying that is a measure of going up. That's the most progressive way you could address that issue. And it would be a radical change in this country if Blacks had, sustainable wealth. Like that would be, and it would be overwhelmingly going for middle working class, low income Blacks.
Right. But but my point is that when the approach is largely a vague call for reparations that centers its movement around addressing itself to establishment politicians with the argument that Black people in this country should specifically have policies directed towards them to get the country to sign off on redistributing wealth just to Black people, that tactically it is a conservative distraction of an argument.
A Black nationalist strategy to address the issues of Black people is conservative. And so
yes, because The reason I'm saying that, the reason I'm saying that is because it is understood. On some level, it's understood that it would require at least 2/3 of this country to sign off on that, meaning a whole bunch of white people would have to sign off on this, and they're not going to do that. It is this being understood, it makes it a claim that can give people radical credibility in certain segments of the Black community to make claims that they are striving to get some radical redistribution for Black people, but there's no political organization or movement tactically prepared to achieve it. So we have a situation where people can boast online and elsewhere and get segments of the Black community in their corner saying we want reparations and we deserve reparations. And that's not an arguable point about deserving. What is an arguable point is how is that redistribution going to take place? And this is where arguments around, and this is where arguments that come from from Brunig's work in that essay or that article do appeal to me, in the sense that they are a reminder of that within the Black community, there is a class divide, and that within the Black community, there is an attempt to use that to benefit through claims of whether it's reparations, business, whatever, that group will benefit and is not really interested in the improvement of the collective in general, which in this context would require an improvement of the collectives of other communities as well, including whites. So it doesn't matter that poor whites relative to poor Black people are better off. What is important is that tactically, they are not going to be willing to sign off on a redistribution of wealth from their own community, class notwithstanding, to Black people. So
period. Even if like the idea that, if we just say it right, poor whites will jump on our side. That's ridiculous.
I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying that.
But you're saying tactically, we can't say, hey, let's do something for Black people because white people won't join in. I'm saying white people aren't joining in, period. Like, so let's just talk about what we need. And I do think actually that that racial wealth divide is so strong and so serious, you are going to need programs specifically focused on Black people, including some type of reparations. But again, and this is Adolph Reed's thing, and I think the white left buys into this, the dismissal of racial wealth divide, racial wealth gap, and they're not focused on big universal issues like $15 hour minimum wage and these types of things. When, these people are against the multiracial Bernie Sanders coalition, when many of the racial wealth divide scholars were giving advice to Bernie Sanders. It's just like,
including Adolph Reed.
Huh?
Including what? Adolph Reed.
I mean, yeah, but so he should know. He knows Derek Hamilton was one of the main guys that was, promoting Bernie Sanders. And so like trying to act like that they can't be for progressive policies even beyond the racial wealth divide, but acknowledge that the racial wealth divide is real and that we actually have to have policies focused on the racial wealth divide is a disservice. Show me I did a report, 10 policy solutions to bridge the racial wealth divide. I've been looking for years about what policies, and even baby saving bonds was meant to be, okay, let's give everybody a little something. So maybe we can get this move forward. But like the attack on, again, the main point is the attack on racial wealth divide is trying to take out, I think, the necessary racial analysis on bridging inequality and just kind of keep whitewashing it. And it's a dismissal of us, and we shouldn't allow that type of dismissal.
So, but is Bruning's argument incorrect then that because essentially he's saying that
and so what he's saying is, and Darity has said this, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, is that if we just made median wealth of Black people 9,000 and move that up to median wealth of white people 166,000 or something like that, there would still be a huge racial wealth divide. Yeah, he's right. I'll take that as a first step. If we can get Black people out of mass asset poverty and get them to about and I think that's even actually almost a fantasy that we're going to get Black people to the median wealth level of whites. But if we did that, that's a great progressive first step. And we can talk further about how we then break up some of the concentrated wealth, particularly among whites. Because, I mean, again, the idea like that, oh, well, we have the same class dynamic in the Black community that's whites, is just like not true. It's like if you have 10 homeless people and one has $10 and the other 9 have $1, and say, well, we shouldn't focus on the 9 and moving them up. We should just break up that $10 that one guy has, and that is more equal. That's a silly way of doing it. And that's a little bit of Brunig's article, because the Black elite, the top 1% in wealth is like 1.5 million. I mean, okay, I mean, that's money, but it's not big money. It's not big money in the scheme of things. We're not getting close to billionaire. It's like even the Black elite have so little wealth compared to anything, close to whites. No, the focus is on breaking up white wealth, redistributing it to a means where Blacks aren't in asset poverty. That's the
right, but that's not. But what appeals to me in what he's saying is, how do we make sure that the redistribution from white to Black doesn't replicate the inequalities that will continue to exist within white and within Black? So in other words, because what he's saying about the accumulation of wealth within the Black community is, I think, accurate. I don't think you're disputing that, are you? You're just saying it doesn't compare to the white community. I get that.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that what gets, if there is this grand redistribution to Black, that is what I'm saying. And there's two things I'm saying that I'm at least clear of. Okay. That there is a class problem within all communities, and that there is a segment of the Black community that is using the conditions of the overall community to achieve its goals as a class. I don't know that that's all I'm saying. Where is Brunig wrong in terms of when wealth gets redistributed, there will not be these class divisions, this 10% within the Black community that has 70% of the wealth?
I think Brunig knows, because he's written with us on the policies, that's why we need to make sure we have strong progressive policies to address the racial wealth divide. And that's why Sandy Darity, Derek Hamilton, Mariko Chang, Ann Price, they've all been writing very progressive space focused on, and this is the contradiction a little bit of his argument is, well, we shouldn't focus on the median wealth because that won't address racial wealth divide as much if people really want to address the racial wealth divide. But the reason so many of us focus on the median wealth is because we want to hit the majority of our people. We want it to be progressive. And he knows this. But most people don't. They take his argument just to continue the basic, stop all this racial division. We'll scare away white working class people who will never vote for you anyway. And let's just talk about, $15 minimum wage for all, right? Which I'm for. I supported that early on. It will do little to nothing to bridge the racial wealth divide, but I'm for it. It's a positive thing, right? It'll do little to nothing to bridge the income divide. All you have to do is look at cities that have $15 minimum wage compared to cities that don't. You don't see any bridging of racial income inequality, right? I'm still for it, but it doesn't do that bridging. And so that's where I think Brunig's smart enough to see, he's at least smart enough to see how his argument's being used. And I think he was going a bit in that direction. So again, I'm not disagreeing with the math. It's just the math is hiding and misleading things and allowing people to dismiss people who've been very intentional on being progressive and trying to make sure when we do have the redistribution that it goes to the poorest first and is working on lifting up the bottom than in just creating Black billionaires. But I've been to millionaire conferences. But
that is what his argument says. He's just saying that the redistribution that you're talking about should also incorporate white workers.
Well, but no, that's not.
He is saying that
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying
I know, but he is saying the same thing you're saying, but adds on that white and other non-Black workers should be included in this redistribution as well. That's all he's saying.
Yeah, and
because he says the wealth should be redistributed. I mean, that's how his article ends. That there needs to be redistribution. The way through this bind is, of course, to acknowledge that racial capitalism has concentrated almost all the national wealth in the hands of a small number of white families, and that the proper course of action is to redistribute that wealth to the multiracial lower and working classes, tackling both racial and class inequality simultaneously.
Well, what he's missing in that is that there has to be a particular focus on Black people if we want Black people to get their proportionate part of wealth. Anytime you do a race blind progressive measure, or just progressive, it'll help everybody. It never hits us in the proportionate way it should in order to bridge racial inequality. So, and he should know, like maybe he doesn't know that, because I think a lot of the white left have their white class first blinders on. But if you study this, it's clear. Unless there's something particularly aimed at Black people, it's not going to hit us in the way that bridges that racial inequality.
So then how does Darity's or anyone else's reparations plan assure that the class division in the Black community isn't replicated or worsened?
Well, but we can do reparations, but Darity was known for his racial wealth gap solutions. And so I would focus first on that. And I think it's very clear, and it was very clear that, so I'm going to make all of my racial wealth gap solutions, or most of them, focused on the lowest wealth, lowest income, make sure most of the money's going to them. And that's how we're going to bring it up. So I think he's been very progressive in that. My biggest critique of Darity, Sandy Darity, is that he hasn't given out a real specific reparations solution. His book, which is very interesting, like From Here Up from Slavery or something like that, is much more of a analysis of the history of reparations and doesn't get too much into detail about what reparations should be. He's more focused on a process that he thinks would be more inclusive and hopefully democratic. But I do agree with you in that, and someone said this, thinking about reparations in the current political context makes my head hurt. And it's true. It's hard to think, like, this country is not going to do a radical redistribution of wealth, colorblind or focused on Black people. But the hard thing is, when you're advocating for policy change, you have to, you can either go to the hills and do the revolution, or you can actually try to get some policy change in today's contemporary society. And, and there's challenges there. So, I do think it's going to be challenging. But again, I think the attack on the racial wealth gap analysis, I think, is actually essential if we're going to do this. And you don't see us generally attacking tax rates or breaking up billionaires, right? Like, no, we're usually for that. But then why are you trying to dismiss a racial analysis necessary to make sure that we actually break up racial inequality? Because I think you could close the wealth gap in the United States a bit for whites and still leave Blacks as distant, because the wealth gap's been growing, but Blacks have always been disenfranchised. And wealth, really not even that much worse. So even as wealth inequality has grown over the last 40 years, what's been pretty consistent is Black wealth inequality. Whether it's a progressive economy or a regressive economy, it's a racist economy. And that's why you need a racial wealth gap analysis, racial wealth divide analysis with, I argue, a progressive focus.
All right. So in the few minutes we have left, and obviously we'll just keep continuing doing this, this is why ultimately my argument is for political power to make all of this moot, which is why I always struggle with with efforts that focus on what exists as the two dominant political parties, and which is why I see the limitations in so much of this, in all of these arguments, because we don't have an organized political movement or struggle that's clear and really wants power.
But
so
you need economic power for a political movement.
Say that again.
You need some type of economic power for a political
See,
movement.
this is where, again, we disagree on this. I keep thinking this is where this is to me, that is to me the propagandized argument in full effect. That because there is no catching up economically.
No.
So we don't need,
like I agree. I'm just saying you need some type of economic base for your political movement.
but
you're not going to have.
I don't even agree. We already have what we need. What we don't have is a committed. We don't have commitment. We don't have organization. We don't have.
You don't have them because we don't have economics focused on it. Like economics helps develop commitment and organization, right? That's, I mean, and you know this, Jared, all organizations need some type of financial base.
It's not about, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is everybody's focus is on somehow getting the bag. And what I'm saying is,
yes,
or even getting money to fund a movement. And that's what everybody keeps claiming, including black class capitalists who want to promote their business efforts as the precursor to this political movement. And I'm saying that's nonsense.
Movements. You're right, correct.
What I'm saying is we already have what we need absent political education and organization. We don't need any more resources. So we need
okay, but it needs to be organized. Our resources need to be organized. Like
everything needs to be organized,
okay,
but
so economic organization is needed and focused. Yes, that is right.
Okay, all right.
I mean, like, I'm not dismissing the political. I'm just saying the political absent the economic organization. I mean, there's no organization that does that. I mean, political organization, even Castro.
That's not true either. Wait a minute, that's not true either.
Okay, who?
Everybody who has wealth now got it through political power. They use political power to establish this thing called the country.
They also use economic power to buy out politicians, to buy militaries. I mean, those things go together. It's economic, politics, and military is how you attain power. And I'm not dismissing the political. I'm just saying, yeah, you need all three, of course.
None of them, again, I'm going to keep going until I'm not interrupted, until I finish my point, and I'm just going to keep saying it. Or I'll just keep repeating it. None of what you're saying, none of it there is no military without political organization. There is no economic marshaling of resources without political organization. It is, and by that, I'm not saying a party necessarily. I'm not saying, I'm not even defining it in that way. I'm simply saying there has to be an organized political will that organizes its resources, its influence to achieve its clearly identifiable goals. What we keep getting is this idea, but your emphasis, tacit, unconscious, whatever you want to do, is let's go get money. So even let's build economic resources and strength. Yes, you. So what is lacking? So even in all the reports and the analysis you put out, is what is lacking is an organized political movement or power struggle that will make what you accurately lay out analytically come true.
My professional writings is racial wealth divide. Absolutely. Yes. That's what I get paid to do. My personal activism, I support political organizing. I support Black Power media. People critique the Nation of Islam, but like I'm in the Nation of it. Like that's organizing, and again, you can critique our politics, our theology, but it's like I do support that. But yes, I get paid to do economic writing.
Right.
I'm not paid political theorist.
But okay. I'm talking about your work. But we're here talking. We're not talking about anything
but Darrity's that economist. Why would he be writing mostly about, particularly his professional work, on political organizing? Like that's
I'm not asking him to. I'm not expecting him to. What I'm saying is those of us who see ourselves as some kind of activists have to create the political movement that would make Darrity, yours, mine, anyone else's work of value. The refrain that continues to bring us back to this, we got to get our money right before we can get our economics right, is what I'm saying is the propagandized mythology that prevents us from advancing.
Right before we get our politics right? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the mythology, the propagated myth is that we have to get our money right before we can get our politics right. And that's why we are, and that is intent.
No, I agree. I agree. Like the idea of putting one before the other is silly. Like, no, we need to organize ourselves politically. We also need to organize ourselves economically so we can keep our political movement going.
But I am saying, Dedrick, we have to put one in first, that there is no economic or military organization without political happening first. That's what I keep saying. So okay. So let me ask Josh to now bring up now I'm confused by my own Is it political? Could you, Josh, bring up number 3, please? Thank you. So, shout out to Kevin Blackistone. Speaking of journalists, black journalists, and in the commercial journalism world, and a professor at the University of Maryland, he sent me this story the other day, and let's see, here we go. And I'm not going to get, we don't have too much time, so I don't want to get too much into it. There's just a couple points I want to bring out of it going forward. And I'll put the link in the show notes so people can see it more, more closely. It's a very interesting article. The Demise of America's One-Time Capital of Black Wealth. Chicago was once known for its power marriage of black business and politics. Today, many black-owned companies have shuttered, dramatically changing the city's landscape. Now, as I've argued elsewhere with Too Black and others on this question of like Black Wall Street, etc., the real demise of these efforts is not a lack of economics or business acumen. It is all political. And I want to come back to this. There's one piece in here that I'm going to come back to about that talks about, for instance, it says it hasn't all evaporated, of course. There are fewer black businesses in the city, but some are doing much, much better, pointing out successful and lucrative black-owned investment houses and bond-selling firms such as Ariel Investments and Loop Capital that give black owners and investors some local clout. So when they're talking about all the black businesses that no longer exist in Chicago, they do mention investment houses and bond-selling firms, Ariel Investments among them. I want to come back to in just a minute. But there's one line in here that for me said it all. Just to summarize for our point, for my point, at least in this discussion this morning. Let's see. So they were talking about, in fact, they talk about the business relationship that supported economically the rise of Harold Washington to the mayor's office. It could be debated as to how effective even his even a repeated term times or term limits in office would have been. Of course, he unfortunately has a heart attack and dies and is replaced by Richard Daley and the Daley Machine, et cetera, and so forth. But the line, it says, anyway, so the article talks about the business relationship to both mayors, Washington and then Daley, with the idea being, as it says here, their bread was being buttered downtown by City Hall. And again, because of you need political ties for zoning, for contracts, for whatever. And then this is the line, though. It says, the result, he said, quote, as black business owners started to climb and get into the wealth circle, they were no longer interested in black empowerment, end quote. Now, there's a lot that could be said about that. My interest and my point in bringing that up is that it to me speaks to this claim that once I get wealthy, I can turn around and help someone. When in reality, what I think this article does a good job in showing is you get wealthy by having certain political ties, by performing a certain duty. I would say this in terms of business, academia, journalism, et cetera. And then, but that to remain so-called successful or to expand or evolve successfully, you have to turn away from what would be considered black empowerment. There is no ability to create, even internally to the black community, a redistributionist, socialist utopia or whatever we might call it within this context. What ends up being required for success is a commitment away from black empowerment, black collective uplift, etc., and so forth. So this is why I keep saying this idea of we can get there. And then, Josh, if you could pull up number 4, please, if we could get there, economically, we could then provide, produce this political movement and power. That's what I'm saying. But go ahead, Dedrick. Go ahead.
If I can jump in. I mean, I agree that political organizing within our system will not get you liberation. Economic organizing within our system will not get you liberation. I don't really know even military organizing wouldn't be allowed. So I don't even know how to deal with that. So like, I agree with that point. Yes, that our system will appropriate you. Whether you become governor, you become mayor, right? You have to get connected enough to the system or become president, right? Like, you're going to follow the system. You have to do something. If you want revolution, you have to do something radically outside. So I agree with that. I just don't think it's a unique argument of economics versus politics. That's just being radical versus unradical, right? Unradical organizing, you're just going to become part of the system. Like, and so you can get your money and be, play a role in the capitalist class, but you're not overthrowing the system unless you're somehow using some money for some, I don't know, revolutionary movement, and just know your economic status will be destroyed within the system because the system won't tolerate that, right? So we're in agreement there. I think with just maybe some of the wording, and again, I think it's more radical organizing versus unradical organizing versus politics over economics.
Okay. But just in terms of this aerial in investment, because this is the black owned business that.
Don't do this, Jared. Don't do this, Jared.
But I have to, because this is just the board of directors page.
Arnie Duncan. Look at Arnie Duncan.
So could you scroll down here, Josh? Because that's the first name I saw, Arnie Duncan. So that's Obama's Secretary of Education. Hold on, don't go too far yet. There's even one better yet. Melody Hobson is the black co-owner, and she's listed there as the CEO and president. But Arnie Duncan, Obama's Secretary of Education, who wanted to militarize the educational system and privatize it. That's him. Chicago power struggle. Okay, now can we go down a little bit, Josh, please? And there she is, Valerie Jarrett.
I've had a meeting with Valerie Jarrett around economic empowerment at the White House. Yeah.
So, you could scroll and just show the other faces. To me, thanks, Josh.
Wait, real quick.
So there are some black and brown faces there.
John Rogers is very interesting, actually. He's an interesting guy. John Rogers. I mean, like he's the face of it. And he for let me say this, for a millionaire investor, he has decently radical ideas for a millionaire investor. Wait, right. Do you know who the husband of Melody Hobson is?
Not off the top, no.
George Lucas. Come on, man. How do you think black women get elevated? What are you talking about, man?
Wait, which George Lucas?
Huh? The George Lucas.
Star Wars?
Come on. Come on, man. How do you come up in this society? You got to marry a rich white man, dude. Come on. I don't mean to besmirch Melody Hobson. I'm just saying it is what it is.
Oh, I love it. I had no idea. I love it.
I didn't think you would know, because I know you would have said something if you would have known.
Not only white, but a Hollywood fiction sci-fi creator of mythology.
No, that's right. And made millions in the 70s, right? So tens of millions, hundreds of millions. And how do you think that helped elevate her to where she's at?
That's even better. I wasn't even ready for
Shirley.
that.
I'm sorry. No, Shirley, I didn't say how do black women get elevated. I said, how do you get elevated in this society? I was not being gender neutral. Plenty of black dudes marry into white society to move up. So don't make me I was not going there, Shirley.
That's why I stay out of the chat, man. It's dangerous. But okay. Oh wow. Listen, DJ, we had to leave it there because I gotta get but oh my goodness, I wasn't ready for that. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
I'm glad we ended that on a mutual happy.
Oh yeah. And anyway, no, I appreciate what you were saying, and I think I just need to think and get a little more clear in my own argument about this. But I appreciate what you were saying, and I really enjoyed engaging all this with you, and look forward to the next one. As soon as you can come back, we definitely want to do this again. But anyway, we got to get to some discussion of Russell Maroon Shoatz and other related issues. So Dedrick Asante-Muhammad, man, thank you very much, man.
Thank you. I got to go work for my corporate funded white nonprofit. So yeah.
There we go. All right. I appreciate you giving time to us today, man. Peace. All right, everybody. We're going to come back and get into some discussion of Russell Maroon Shoatz here on I Mix What I Like live right here on Black Power Media. Don't go anywhere. Back in a quick minute. Peace. Oh.
I'm trying to leave, Jared. I'm trying to leave.
I'm trying. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, everybody, back again here at I Mix What I Like live right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, working out through these technical difficulties or my own difficulties with this new platform, which we may or may not adopt permanently. And let me tell you just real quick. StreamYard had cut, for whatever reason, they've canceled our full HD broadcast capability. That was one issue that we haven't worked out with them. I don't know what that was all about. And we had a whole bunch of stuff over the weekend. And so that was one reason why I quickly set this up. And there are other reasons that some might be familiar. But anyway, we continue to struggle on here at I Mix What I Like. And again, big shout out to Dedrick Muhammad. Anyway, we look forward to continue having these conversations. And there's more that maybe we'll get to later on, maybe even this morning, because there were some other things around crypto that I haven't had a chance to get to that I thought was going to get worked in with that conversation. But anyway, we did what we could do. We'll come back and continue to do more as we can. So shout out to my man, Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows. I had sort of put out a request to him for some help, in seeing if we could have some discussion around Russell Maroon Shoatz and his death. And the ongoing struggle around political prisoners. And a few folks were kind enough to jump on and agree to come on and talk with us, including Mama Julia Wright, who I will bring up now. Greetings to you once again. Of course, among many other things, author, journalist, activist, daughter of Richard Wright, and someone who has agreed to jump on this morning and help us discuss the aftermath of the death of Russell Maroon Shoatz. And I see Cindy Lou is there. I don't see her camera on. I'm not sure if they're ready to jump on yet or not. But and I think we were expecting one or two others. But anyway, Mama Julia, good morning, welcome, and thank you for coming back. Okay, why? All right, hold on. Am I not? I'm still not now. I'm not hearing you now. What happened now? What I do now? Oh, hold on a second. My apologies. Yeah, why don't I hear you? Oh man, this is terrible. Is this, and it is just me, right? Everybody else hears you, right? Dang. This is terrible. Why don't I hear her? Everything was just working a second ago. Oh no, nobody can hear you. Mama Julia, this is not just me, apparently. Can you check your settings and make sure your mic is, if you click to the right of your mic, you see that little pop-up menu, and then you can make sure the audio input is set to your headset. And then let me also just confirm with is Cindy Lou Good morning. Are you ready to join us? Are you attempting to stay off camera? Could you maybe let us know in the private chat before we bring you on screen? And we'll all just struggle through this. But Julia, do you see on the right of your microphone symbol the little pop-up menu that allows you to select? You hear me? Okay. But do you see that pop up next to you? You have a microphone symbol that allows you to mute or unmute. And then to the right of that should be a pop-up arrow that allows you to select the audio input. And then, oh, Cindy is just, okay, just watching, okay. And then you might have to, okay. And if that doesn't work, you might have to check the input output of your computer. Anyway, while that, let's see if we can try this again. Did that change anything? No. Are you able to check the settings on your computer? I see you. All right, I don't hear what you're saying. Do you want to try disconnecting your headphones? That was a suggestion. Just unplug your headphones. All right, everybody, we're endeavoring. We're going to work this out. We're going to get there. And I appreciate everybody's patience. And what I think I'll do in the interim is there were a couple of other things that I wanted to get to. By the way, on this crypto thing, everybody, I have been so to some of you, thank you and apologies. I've been inundated, from what is for me at least, inundated by comments and critiques, suggestions around cryptocurrency, my arguments about crypto, and I've been reading. I've been like rabbit holing and listening, and I've been in touch with the blockchain socialist again. Checked out another one of his interviews, and we're trying to set. I have to try again to set up a time. Although I was really disappointed in the last. I was telling him my point. This is really what my issue was. With everybody, is that I'm not hearing in their arguments how blockchain as a technology or any particular currency can generate and redistribute wealth. I don't see how it gives, to the point I was trying to make with Dedrick, how it delivers upon us political power. And to the extent that we are being encouraged as leftists or radicals or black people or whoever to engage in the technology or the currency, and I recognize blockchain is not the currency. I don't understand why the emphasis is not around political education and organization. It's similar to what I'm saying about the argument around reparations, that the emphasis being around making an appeal to the established government of the United States for a payout or redistribution specifically to Black people is tactically and overall an insufficient approach. There's so much more wealth out there in terms of what is out there, and there's so much more in terms of humanity, what is an opportunity to redefine wealth, its creation, its application and role in society. And I don't get where any of this is, and then at the same time, I'm seeing, and I wasn't ready for this morning, but this was something I was wanting to bring up at some point, that I'm seeing more of a replacement of banks with privatized equity group, private equity group owned digital platforms like Coinbase or this new one, BlockFi. So, all right, let's see. So that article isn't going to come up. All right, let's do this. Oh man. So what happened to, and then I'm wondering what happened to the other folks that were going to come on this morning to talk Shoatz. Dang. All right, well, let's see if we can get any of this worked out in the interim. Let's do this here. And then obviously we'll continue to find and invite folks back on to talk about Shoatz and political prisoners. But dang, I can't do that. All right. All right, Josh, could you do me a favor and pull up this link, please? This was one story I did want to cover, and then there was another one that I'm going to ask you to pull up as well in just a second. Somewhat unrelated, but in many ways. Thank you very much. So this story here, let's see. Is there a better way to display that? Can you even move it? Let's see. There we go. To my ongoing struggle with Netflix, Black-led banks will receive a $100 million investment from Netflix. Coming from the Black News. Is this Black News Channel? Yeah, this is Black News Channel, right? Yeah, Black News Channel that just laid off a whole bunch of people, despite their billionaire owner. I don't know. Anyway, but if we just look at this story real quick, according to Variety, this is part of Netflix's initiative to allocate 2% of its cash holdings to banks servicing Black communities. In June 2020, when social justice was at the center of public discussion following George Floyd's murder, Netflix announced its plans to invest capital in Black banks. So $10 million is going to go to Hope Credit Union to boost economic opportunities in underserved communities in Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. $25 million to Local Initiatives Support Corporation as seed funding to establish the Black Economic Development Fund. $10 million to the Change Company to provide financing to Black homeowners. $25 million to Enterprise Community Impact Note, a seed funding to support initiatives fighting marginalized housing practices and to create affordable housing. $10 million to my favorite One United Bank. They didn't specify. They didn't even come up. They didn't. One United Bank didn't even. They just take it. They didn't even put a little label on what they're claiming to do with it. $20 million to Calvert Impact Capital Community Investment Note to support housing in diverse communities. So banks, one credit union, banks, and housing initiatives, which is, and I did not look it up, but and I will. But my initial assumption is that would be sort of indirect payments to mortgage lenders. Great. And they've launched the new series, that will be launching, Banking on Us, which will be coming out, I believe, soon. Because when I click this video, it's like a promo for
they mean to invest in the
investing in getting your bank account and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but I'll definitely want to follow up on that. I just don't think anyway. So we'll see. Yeah, let's play the video, Josh. Yeah, please. Let's go ahead and play it and see what and be reminded of what
Black community. What does it really mean to invest in the Black community?
There are real people who can empower America and the world to be better.
As we unpack a complicated relationship with banking, while also showing how we could successfully change the narrative on Black businesses, Black homeownership, and investing in the Black community. This is Banking on Us. On June 30th, 2020, Netflix decided it would take $100 million and invest it directly into Black-owned financial institutions.
My name is Aaron Mitchell. I am from New Haven, Connecticut, and I lead HR for Netflix Animation Studios. April 16th, I was hosting a networking dinner. Netflix is, I'd say, pretty famous at this point for its culture because it's a company that invites entrepreneurial thinking and then gives people the actual tools to do that. We had put together these dinners to bring together leaders from underrepresented groups with our executives. And so somebody on that dinner was like, hey, how do we get corporations to move their money into Black banks? And that was sort of the light bulb moment for me where I was like, I don't know, but I'm gonna ask. So a couple weeks later, I asked our CFO. He's like, look into it, do some research. I did some research, put together a proposal. That was May 22nd when I finished that proposal. And then May 25th, George Floyd was murdered. And it created this sort of internal sense of urgency around doing something for these communities. I had looked up a number of Black banks. There were 19 in the country. I'm like, cool. Bill Bynum was the first person that we spoke to.
I'm Bill Bynum. I'm the CEO of Hope Credit Union. I got a call one day from Aaron Mitchell.
He talked to us about, capital requirements.
He was familiar with the work that Hope was doing.
Hope is a community development financial institution, so we were created to provide opportunities for people that have not had that access.
We started having conversations.
We were able to agree that by investing in Black-led financial institutions,
we can start to heal people and we can start to see progress.
There's a huge disparity in one's ability to achieve economic prosperity because of the color of the skin.
We need to talk about this because if people can't get out of these neighborhoods, they can't get into corporate America, they can't become leaders. So this whole work is pointless if we can't solve the root cause of the problem.
Let's stop for a second and dive deeper into this. Black wealth, Black dollar, Black spending, Black businesses, generational wealth, racial wealth gap. Let's get to the point. Are Black people the reason their communities don't seem to reach their fullest potential? Even though the racial wealth gap is widening, Black people as a collective spend more than $1 trillion a year. So if we have the money and the desire to spend, what seems to be the holdup on us flourishing like the kings and queens we are? Policy, systematic racism, laws, and more policy. Mirza Baradaran breaks down in her book, Color of Money, that the wealth gap is spearheaded by policies America has put in place for centuries, from the Jim Crow era to the present day. 60% of Black Americans, relative to 20% of white Americans, are either unbanked or underbanked. This means the Black people who have money and are trying to get money are being significantly cut out of the picture. And then there's redlining. The devaluing of Black homes and Black neighborhoods is a direct impact that steals wealth away from Black people. The law has unfortunately made sure this has happened to our community, where appraisers will automatically devalue Black homes, and states will just mark certain areas as poor and limit their resources completely. Crazy, right? The proof is in the pudding. So what exactly happened? What's happening now? And most importantly, how do we move forward as a community to get ourselves in a place to win? Now that we took a look at that, Let's continue.
Operation Breadbasket was kicked off by Martin Luther King back in 1968.
He told the community to
Put their money into black banks,
that's going to support your family and your community.
and create progress and prosperity for all.
Hold up, Josh. Pause this joint
Unfortunately,
real quick,
Dr. King was
man.
murdered.
Please pause this joint. How do I let me move myself around here real quick. That is a mess. All right, so first of all, the buying power claim brought up again. That again, making the claim that we have this $1 trillion, so why can't we come up? Then they go from that to the reason we can't come up is because of we're underbanked and redlining. All to bring up Barateron's work, which is not perfect, has its flaws, but is not arguing. Man, that's so slick how they do that. She's not arguing. I don't read her work and take that she's arguing that black people need to be more banked. It's not underbanking. It's banking policy, and banks themselves, black owned or not, are not here to create wealth for, and cannot, in fact, create wealth for black people. And again, in my own research, I found the comparisons in the economic analyses that make between black-owned banks. I don't think it was in Barateron that I got this. I can't. It could be, but I don't think so. That black-owned banks are the equivalent nationally to are the equivalent in a microcosm to the black community what small banks are to the white community, and that's why small banks within the white community, even in a white supremacist capitalist society, can't grow wealth for those communities. Banks don't create wealth. Being banked isn't the solution to poverty and inequality. Redlining to the point of policy is more to that point. But Netflix in this series and in their own distribution and application of their money is not arguing for political power or a political policy. They're not making a political policy argument. They're making an investment argument, and in practice making a nominal, relatively small investment in segments of the black community or segments targeting the black community that by definition cannot help. This is not a crisis of home ownership and banking. This is not a crisis of even the very racist redlining and appraisal of black communities and homes. Even where there is adequate appraisal for whites, that does not solve the crisis within internal to white America, vis-a-vis capitalism, banking, inequality, etc. So yes, to Dedrick's point, obviously black poor and white poor are not the same, but each will exist within each's community, given a continuity of this economic system, societal relationship, and approach. So then they get worse by bringing Dr. King into it, whereas I've discussed earlier, particularly around the work of Maggie Anderson and that nonsense of My Black Year, which I've looked at more closely and should probably talk more about. That in fact, maybe I'll start even in a few minutes, if especially if Mama Julia doesn't get it'll fit right in perfectly. I could start right now. Is itself Anyway, Maggie Anderson's point about making that claim last year or earlier this year, was it this year or the year before during Dr. King's birthday, where she misrepresents King entirely. And as is similarly happening here, King was not saying Black businesses and banking is a solution. In fact, he was saying explicitly the exact opposite. He said, it takes federal policy. It would take national, federal, not investment, but public policy to redistribute the wealth of this society to help Black people. This is not about certainly investment or banking or buying power or anything else. So anyway, let's go ahead and continue, man. Josh, please push play on this joint and let's continue with
that same year before Operation Breadbasket got off the ground. This is one of many viable paths forward to start righting these wrongs. And maybe at some point.
My bad, Josh. My bad. Hold up. Let's also remember what happened with Operation Breadbasket. That this ultimately becomes the program King develops and allows for Jesse Jackson to take over, to get Jesse out of his face, to get out of the day-to-day operations of SCLC and King's work. Again, it would also be part of the arrangement of programs King would be critical of at the end of his life, and explicitly so in Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, in those speeches that, frankly, I should do more to help distribute, given to the SCLC leadership in the summers of 66 and 67, where this King is very much saying these policies we've gotten are insufficient. These programs we are insufficient. The dream I had is now a nightmare. I mean, all of this stuff he's saying is insufficient. And then here we are in about to be 2022, having Netflix re-promote as coming from King what King in his own lifetime was saying was insufficient. Anyway, please continue, Josh. Thank you.
Even in my lifetime, we can see a version of this that we're comfortable with.
We as a community need to embrace the work that Dr. King gave his life for.
We meant to show the rest of corporate America what's possible.
To be a homeowner and a person of color is one of the greatest milestones that you can ever achieve.
It's almost indescribable. It's a sense of accomplishment.
Having an institution that will lend funds in order for me to reach the goals I'm trying to get to.
And so the spark is, hey, if we did this and it's working, if everybody did this, we could actually change this world. The rest is history.
Yeah. So banking and home ownership. Exactly. Just as it reads in Netflix, in that article about Netflix and their $100 million donation, that video supports what it reads. We're going to give money to help people buy homes, which we just acknowledged in the video will be redlined and undervalued as soon as you buy it. And we're going to give money to mortgage lenders so that more Black people can get a mortgage and buy a home that's probably now owned by BlackRock at this point, and will be promoted as the all-saving, world-changing reality. And as we've covered here already, all the signs are saying that all of the indicators that led to the 2008 collapse, where all that wealth and home ownership was erased in Black and brown communities, all those indicators even worse now. So as we talk about here with Wall Street on Parade and their work and elsewhere, all of the indicators are saying, and Michael Burry, by the way, I just watched The Big Short again the other day. I highly recommend that movie. I don't often recommend movies, but I highly recommend that movie. And Michael Burry, who predicted and made, he wrote on the board, I think it was $269 billion for his hedge fund in predicting the collapse of the housing market in 2008. He's saying everything that was going wrong then is worse now. So yeah, but sure, get more Black people into home ownership, and that's and banking, and that's a solution. It's consistent. And then there was the buying power argument again. I don't even think I caught that when I just was watching it too quickly, obviously. Yeah. All right. So dang. I don't think I can show this one because it's behind a paywall. All right. Well, let me just at least do this. If there's this argument. Let's see. Josh, can you pull up this one here? And it should be set to a timestamp to play. But a channel I've been watching, and some of you were already on to him. Jake Tran is a video content producer of considerable skill. This is not a political endorsement, but it is but in terms of the information, it's a fascinating way to get some information. And one of the things that he has been talking about on several of his videos is he is a supporter, by the way, of crypto and blockchain. So it's interesting that it's from this video that it's very confusing. That's why I'm saying it can't be a progressive solution, that I learned about BlockFi. But what he does note in this is that one of the reasons why he supports crypto, and this is why I'm, again, not a supporter of the current economic system, is that he notes that 80% of the money in the US money currently in circulation was created only since 2020. So using Federal Reserve reports, he shows that I think up at 2019 2019, only $4 trillion or so was in circulation, and now it's at 20 some trillion. And his point is that with that kind of inflation, his argument is that 80% of the value of everybody's wealth and money in the bank was wiped out. So what he, and his videos is sponsored by BlockFi. And when I looked up this BlockFi, and Josh, maybe Josh stepped out. Maybe Josh is trying to help Mama Julia still. I'm not sure, but I'll at least pull this up. Oh, you all ready to share? Yeah, go ahead and pull this up and let's play this clip. And it should be already set to be right where I wanted it to. Did you pull it up already? Is it there though? Oh, there it is. There you go. All right. Let's play this real quick.
At the end of the war, the 40 biggest and most important governments in the world all came together at the Bretton Woods Hotel in New Hampshire to try to find a new financial standard that would be less likely to cause a global bankruptcy. The US had more than 75% of the world's gold, and the dollar was one of the only currencies still linked to the gold standard by then. So the countries agreed they would value their national currencies relative to the dollar's value in gold. It was basically a very indirect version of the gold standard that pinned the value of the dollar at $35 per ounce of gold. All the other countries of the world would adjust the value of their currency according to that. And for a while it worked. the US stockpiled its new gold from countries who wanted to trade in gold for dollars, and the Bretton Woods system became the new way to have a stable currency after a chaotic war. But all things must come to an end, and that end came in the year 1971. So by the late 40s and early 50s, the US had a new superpower, the ability to print as much money as it needed for whatever it wanted. It wasn't supposed to work like that. There was supposed to be a methodical decision-making process that kept the amount of dollars in the world equal to the amount of gold the US has stockpiled, but the temptation to print money was just too great. It was like giving a child the keys to a candy shop. Whenever there was a new national development, social program, or massive technological project, the US could just print the money it needed to pay for it. After all, dollars were as good as gold. With all this extra money, the economy obviously boomed, but it wasn't sustainable. By 1955, America went to war in Vietnam, and suddenly, it needed a lot more money than it had in gold. The Vietnam War carried on for 20 years and cost $168 billion, or around $1 trillion in today's money. To fund it, the government had to print money like crazy, and near the end, this reckless creation of new dollars finally caught up with it. You see, other countries started noticing that the US was printing way more money than it could possibly have in gold. So they got worried. What if the president suddenly announced that instead of $35 for an ounce of gold, it would be now $45 or $50? It would be the perfect way for the US to stay afloat, but it would mean countries like the UK and France would have to pay way more money to get their gold back. So the UK and France decided to quit while they were still ahead, and France sent a warship to New York to pick up their gold. It was 1971. And President Nixon was having none of it. So in one fell swoop, he declared a suspension of anyone's ability to convert dollars into gold.
I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to take the action necessary to defend the dollar against the speculators. I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
This short statement would become one of the most pivotal moments in history that hardly anyone knows the importance of. For the first time in modern history, the world's money was no longer tied to anything. For the first time, if you want to take people's wealth, if you want them to work for you as your indentured slaves, no longer did you have to do it at the point of a gun or through taxes, both of which breeds resentment. Now all you had to do was print more money. The more money you printed, the more of their wealth you stole from them without them ever even noticing it before it's too late. Because the dollar amount in their bank account stays the same, but the value of those dollars goes down. What started in 1971 was the greatest con and wealth redistribution scheme humanity has ever seen. And with it, the Bretton Woods system officially came to an end. The money printer was let loose, and the chaos that resulted was subtle, like boiling a frog. Immediately, the dollar's value dropped at least 50%. All that new money pushed up the prices of assets like real estate and stocks, which the rich own and the poor don't, furthering the divide. What used to take 30 hours of work to buy 1 unit of a publicly traded stock in 1860 would take at least 126 hours of work today. 1971 was also the year that the 30-year mortgage standard was introduced, which meant that where you could have bought a house for just 3 years' salary in 1950, you're in debt for the next 30 years today.
Instant money, M-O-N-E-Y, in the form of a convenient personal loan.
So household debt explodes exponentially, college tuition explodes exponentially, the number of lawyers quadrupled. And what did all that debt and divide mean for middle and low income families? Over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, even when they make more than $100,000 a year. Most Americans that can save have less than $5,000 in their savings accounts, and the income for the middle and lower classes has stayed nearly the same since 1971, while the upper class continues to climb. The modern pleb is a debt slave draped in Louis. And today, we might be witnessing the grand finale of the dollar. Almost a year ago, I made a video on how 40% of US dollars were printed in the year 2020, one of our most popular videos on the channel. Well, today, the Federal Reserve has updated those numbers, and I redid the math. It's no longer 40% of all US dollars were printed since 2020, not 50%, not even 70%. Nope, since January 2020, the US has printed nearly 80% of all US dollars in existence. 80%! M1. I literally had to do a double take when I saw this number, because what? But yes, at the start of 2020, there was $4 trillion in circulation, and in October 2021, there's over $20 trillion in circulation. That means, ladies and gentlemen, that the government has so far robbed 80% of your wealth in the span of under 2 years. And although you may only feel this theft in higher gas prices and such so far, it's probably gonna get a lot worse. So what is the solution? Not financial advice, but 1, don't get in debt. 2, click the join button below for private documentaries too controversial to be released to the public, to continue to learn how the world really works.
So thank you, Josh. I appreciate that. So, okay, so we do have a guest that is here to talk about Russell Maroon Shoatz, at least for a few minutes. So I don't want to belabor the point too long, but very quickly, one of the things, and I think it comes up right there, right after that part of his sort of commercial, is that he does a commercial for BlockFi. So now I get it. All that I agree with the general analysis, or in the rendition of the history as he lays it out there, and I get the critique of the current banking and economic system. Obviously, I'm not supporting that, but the suggestion that we move and start investing in crypto and start using exchanges like BlockFi as replacements to banks. And yes, I understand crypto is not a fiat currency. I understand that it is not, it has a finite limit in terms of Bitcoin, for instance, which is someone kept pointing out to me. I was saying that I wasn't doing enough to distinguish my critique of crypto between Bitcoin and shit coins. But even with the wonders of Bitcoin, what I'm saying, and the finite amount that there is, people are still only able to invest in fractions of a coin, which boosts the value of those who own the greater degree, which are the same billionaires, and they're all, et cetera. And they're all being run on exchanges themselves created by private hedge funds and private equity groups, that are being said to replace banks, the replacement of banks. When you look at BlockFi, and then here I'll wrap here, BlockFi promises that one of the things that makes it even better than its competing exchanges is that you earn interest on your crypto saved in that exchange, in that wallet, or traded on that exchange. How do you earn interest? Either interest is being generated by others who come in after you, creating money that can be redistributed back to you at a given time, which sounds Ponzi-ish, or they are taking that collected wealth or deposits, I should say, the collected deposits, just as a bank, and investing it to get returns that can be brought back in and given back as interest. So so again, I'm saying, where is this revolutionary change? But anyway, let me stop there. Let me do this. Let's do a quick. Let me do a quick sort of pause break, and then we're going to come back with at least one guest to talk a little bit about Russell Maroon Shoatz. And again, my apologies, everybody, for the technical difficulties and all that are going on here this morning as we continue to work things out. But continue, please, to bear with us, and as we'll start a discussion now, and we can continue it as often and as we like on this show and throughout the platform. But back in just a second to talk more about Russell. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. All right, everybody, back again here at I Mix What I Like. We're going to talk a little bit about Russell Maroon Shoatz, who recently passed, a longtime political prisoner. Maroon the Implacable, the great book collection of his writings and essays, was excerpted a little bit by my man, Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows, recently for a powerful piece that's on imixwhatilike.org. The book itself is fantastic. But Russell Maroon Shoatz, coming out of Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army in Philadelphia, earned the name Maroon for his refusal to remain incarcerated as often as he could, escaping. Did in fact see release a couple weeks ago, just in time to come home and to pass outside of at least those prison walls, if not those broader ones that still encapsulate us all. And to talk to us at least a little bit about him and what continues to go on is Kempis Ghani. Am I saying that correctly? And are you in fact choosing to stay off camera? And if so, the songster, Kempis Ghani songster, forgive me. And are you in fact choosing to stay off camera? And if so, that's cool. But in either event, welcome and greetings to you. Good morning. And okay, maybe we don't have Kempis. So apologize for that as well. Thought we were all set there. Okay. Excuse me. Mama Julia, unfortunately, is not able to get back as well. So, all right, look here, everybody. We could, sometimes the days just go like that. You just have one of those days. This is a different platform. Perhaps it's causing us problems, the newness of it. I don't know what it looks like to guests, so maybe there's some difficulty that they're having there. I certainly had my own. But let me at least thank our attempted guests for coming on, and I'll say publicly, and we'll work, off the record to have them come back. If not Friday, maybe throughout the week on the remix or elsewhere on the platform. As I know they are always welcome. Well, you know what? So I'll at least, I don't know if they'll work this out, or maybe if they do, we'll have them come on. But let me at least go through a couple of other things here that I had that I wanted to get to. By the way, let's see, I'll at least pull this up here. And I'll just go ahead and attempt to share this myself on this one if I can. And no, I can't. Wow. Hold on a second. Let's, all right. So that's not what we want. All right. Josh, do me a favor and pull this one up, please, so we can at least show what Brother Todd had put together. And let's see. Thank you very much. This is the piece here that Brother Todd put together. And you get to read an interview. It's a powerful interview. And you hear from Maroon himself. It's an excerpt from Maroon the Implacable. Something I quote all the time from that book is how he reset the definition of violence and nonviolence and and put it on scientific terms, saying that, using Newton's laws, you cannot stop something in force without equal and opposite motion or force, and that nonviolence, he said, is not an absence of violence, or rather, that's not how he put it. I said that wrong. Nonviolence, rather, is the absence of violence. It's not the opposite of violence. So the opposite of violence is counter-violence, an equal and opposite force and reaction. So Long piece there. I encourage people to check that out. It's at imixwhatilike.org, or you can just get the book and get that and more. I don't think, the violence piece I don't think is in there, Josh. That's just something from elsewhere in the book that I quote all the time. Something that just always stood out to me. But okay, so I invite people to check that out and appreciate that. This is somewhat of an unrelated story, but I did also want to bring this up. I actually had wanted to get to it last week on the remix, so I'll just go ahead and get to it now. And I don't really have much to say on it. I'll share this link with Josh, but it was just something that caught my attention. And it's an update. The UK government issues an apology last week for the Grenfell Tower fire that we all remember from a couple of years ago now. At the Grenfell Fire Inquiry, Jason Beer, QC, speaking on behalf of Johnson's government, Department of Leveling Up. Is this? Wait a minute. I may be late to this. Is this Boris Johnson's or is this Biden's? Who did this first? Is Leveling Up their Build Back Better, or is Build Back Better their Leveling Up? Or is that really just the actual name, Leveling Up Housing and Communities? Is that an actual department name that has always existed over there, or is that something that Johnson just put together? Anyway, they issued a formal apology for a lack of oversight, which he claimed allowed local actors to violate regulations, leading to 72 deaths in the 2017 Grenfell Tower fire. So it's not national issue. It's not the federal government. It's not wild inequality and racist abuse and assaults on the poor. It's local actors violated regulations, and that led to the fire. But as he says, the department is deeply sorry for its past failures in relation to its oversight of the system that regulated safety in the construction and refurbishment of high-rise buildings. It also deeply regrets past failures in the relation to the superintendents of the building control bodies. He added, had there been functional enforcement system with efficient assurance built in, non-compliance to the extent that gave rise to Grenfell Tower tragedy may not have been possible. So I guess maybe they are taking some. The regulatory system, he admitted, was unfit for purpose, and the department had assumed that compliance was being monitored by qualified experts at the local level, and that non-compliance with the regulations would be identified by building control. That sounds really shady right there. That sounds really shady. It sounds like the only people that got punished for Guantanamo were the soldiers, the rank and file soldiers that abused the prisoners. Anyway, but they're sorry. They're sorry, and I'm sure now the regulation and oversight that they were looking forward that should have existed is now in there. Josh, could you share this one too, please? Another story that I wanted to get to last week, but I want to bring up at least very quickly today, something very dear and near to my heart, and just yet another reminder why I think we need an after party type engagement with the political apparatus, because as folks I'm sure here know, Biden is restarting loan repayment, and it's being described here as a betrayal to his voters. I'm personally, punished by this. I know many people are suffering at the weight of this, but I can't help but engaging my pettiness and saying, I told you, I mean, whatever he was promising was insufficient, and he wasn't going to do it. And everybody just didn't want Trump. So he was going to say whatever he needed to say, and he wasn't going to do anything. And now even the $10,000 forgiveness, that's out of here. I will say the one thing that I think that is holding is that gaps in payments are being forgiven. So if you needed like a contiguous or continuous payments, gaps will be covered. Not covered in terms of you don't have to pay, but covered in terms of they won't count against your repayment plan. I think that's all we're getting. But at the end of the day, this is not what folks were hoping for when they were telling us, trying to convince us why we should go ahead and support him, as if he had something beyond, not being Trump, you know. So anyway, oh, you know what? There was by the way, that's what I had meant to do. I did that wrong too. So this whole day has just been this whole show has just been a clusterfuck of sorts, and I apologize for that. But one of the things I had intended to do, we don't need to play it, Josh, but let me at least just pull this up to put it on screen, if you would, because this story, what I didn't even pay attention to my own notes. Went out of order. Got a little discombobulated this morning. Got out of order. So the first thing I had meant to do was show this story. We don't even need to play it. I just want to put it up on the screen because it's a story from the good folks over at Breaking Points, Crystal and Sagar. I don't mean to do this on purpose. Sagar. But they were reporting, and I don't need to play it. Can you show the there we go, the title, because the report is about how inflation hits a 40-year high, destroying wage gains. And they were just showing how the cost. All right, so what they were doing was looking at the issue from the opposite end of Jake Tran, and that was what I was attempting to do. What I had wanted to do in putting them together was to pull this story up, show that there is this 40-year high in inflation, destroying wage gains, and then they show you here, as it's shown on the screen, the uptick in prices that are negatively impacting the spending power, buying power of the average consumer, because the money that we have in our pockets is no longer worth what it was last year or 4 years or 5 years ago or even 2 years ago. But what Jake Tran is saying, was showing, is why, because this video, they don't discuss the or what causes the inflation, or they don't define inflation really, or explain it in the way that Jake Tran does, which is what I appreciate, that it has a lot to do with, or all to do with, an increase in money in circulation. And when you can create, whether the physical dollar bills or the ledgers in digital bank accounts, digitized bank accounts, when you can create money and give it away to your friends and to your elite business partners, etc., it devalues the money that the rest of us have, because it just puts more in circulation. And then how does that play out? On a day-to-day basis, gas goes up, rental cars, used car, hotels, every food, utilities, everything goes up. We pay more, so that if you got a raise, or if you were making more, or if you are nominally making more than you were before, it's all gone, because you have to pay more to survive. And of course, we pay more for everything from medical, education, housing, everything that so many things that should be covered by the wealth we generate, or the taxes we pay, or that are taken from us, should cover more things, instead of just defense, basically, military defense and the contracting it does to private corporations. Anyway, but yeah, I think, oh man. So we'll come back to this. We'll come back to the virtual immersive stuff. I think there's been enough tech difficulties for one day. We have gone over a little bit our time. Listen, everybody, Josh and Aaliyah, much appreciation for the background assistance. Big shout out to Cindy, Julia, Kempis, Dr. Todd Stephen Burrows, everybody attempting to contribute to a discussion of Russell Maroon Shoatz this morning. My apologies to everybody across the board for the tech difficulties and the struggles that I have not fully helped us overcome this morning. Big shout out to Dedrick Muhammad for that conversation, which we'll be doing again. And a big shout out to all of you. I appreciate all of you who have stayed through this morning. I've appreciated seeing you all stay strong and for coming through. And I'm sure the chat and the discussion was off the hook. And I'm sure I suffered some high quality jokes. I know we joke about being petty, but we have high quality jokes. So I'm sure whatever was said to and about me this morning was of the highest quality. And I appreciate that. And to everybody who's going to see and hear this later, I appreciate you as well. We will come back and be doing this much better throughout the week, of course, with the Remix Morning Show and my show again on Friday. Get some of these quirks worked out. We'll come back and definitely be covering political prisoners. In fact, my colleagues on the platform have a lot coming up around that as well. So we didn't quite get there today, but we will get there in the future. And I'll see you then. So as always, like Fred Hampton used to say, peace if you're willing to fight for it. Thanks again, everybody. And we'll catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What I like, what I like, what I like.